Okay, this is a question about simplifying and using the order of operations, which means that we need to remember our PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, and addition, subtraction. So we want to actually here start with our parentheses. And I know how much we love fractions. So we'll do a quick little refresher on how fractions will work. So anytime we're adding or subtracting fractions, we always need to have a common denominator. And I like to think of this common denominator or this denominator as the unit of measure. So, for instance, an inch is smaller than a foot. Well, a fourth is smaller than a half. So we can think of these as units of measure. And we can only add things together or subtract things together if they're in the same unit of measure. Well, we can't take this 4 down to a 2 because 3 is not divisible by 2. But what we could do is we could multiply this 2 by 2 and multiply this 2 or this 1 by 2, because whatever you do on the bottom, you have to do on the top. And the 2 times 2 here would give us 4. So then we would have a common denominator. So we're going to have 3/4 minus 2/4. So now we have 3 of something minus 2 of something. And those somethings just happen to be fourths. So this is the same thing as 3 minus 2 over 4. Because it's 3 minus 2 fourths. We've got 3/4 and we're taking away 2/4. And that's going to be the same thing as 1/4. So now we can rewrite this as 5/4 plus 4 times 1/4 to the second power. Well, now we have to have a little bit of a refresher on our exponents. That's the little floating number up there. And that little floating number tells us how many of this thing that it's touching we're going to multiply together. So since that's a 2, we're going to take 2 1/4 and multiply them. So let's get a different color here. Here we go. So 1/4 times 1/4. Remember, the way we multiply fractions is a little bit different from the way we add subtract. We just multiply across. Oops, I wrote plus and then times. 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 times 4 is 16. So 1/4 to the second power is going to be 1/16. So we can rewrite this as 5/4 plus 4 times 1/16. Okay. So now we did our parentheses, we did our exponents, we've got some multiplication here that we have to deal with. This right here. Now, some of us may have a hard time with remembering how to multiply a whole number by a fraction. Well, if you think about it, multiplication is the same thing as repeated addition, adding the same thing over and over and over. So we could take 4 1/16 and add them together. Say 1/16 plus 1/16 plus 1/16 plus 1/16. That's going to be, well, they all have the same unit of measure because they're all 16ths. So we've got 1 of something, and plus 1 of something, plus 1 of something, and 1 of something. So that's all 4 of those same things. And they happen to be 16ths. And of course, we also want to write this in simplest form, which means we don't want to have anything. We want to have the top and the bottom not have any common factor besides 1. So 4/16 is the same as 1/4. That's if we use repeated addition. Well, multiplication is a shortcut. And we've got this whole number. And what we can do is we can take that whole number and say put it over 1. Because this is actually saying 4 divided by 1. How many times can 1 go into 4? Well, that's 4. So 4 over 1 is the same thing as 4. So we have the 4 over 1 times 1/16. And for multiplying, we multiplied straight across. 4 times 1 is 4. And 1 times 16 is 16. So we still end up with 4/16. And then do the same thing that we did before. Divide these both by 4. And that's going to equal 1/4. So we can now write this as 5/4 plus 1/4. Oh, thank goodness they have common denominators. We don't need to do anything else. We've got 5 things plus 1 thing. So we have 6 of those things. And those things just happen to be fourths. Well, that's not quite in simplest form because 6 and 4 can both be divided by 2. So we want that in simplest form, so that's going to be 3 over 2. So that's our simplification there, is 3 over 2, or 3 halves.